What's up guys, it's Kram.Visuals here. And if you want to learn all these effects around me, subscribe to this channel. Now in today's tutorial, we will take a closer look at how I made this 3D effect for the Apple Health app. So let's cut the talking, straight into After Effects. Alright, now into After Effects, same as last time, you can use any settings you want here, any aspect ratios. Just pay attention that you use 30 frames per second or higher. Now, since we want to go for that Apple kind of background or Apple kind of style, let's choose a rather lighter background. We can mess around with that later. Now it's just for the general scene setup. Now, as we can see, we have three different sort of cards here. So we'll have to design that first and set up the scene this way. So what we're going to do is create a new shape layer. Preferably with the rounded rectangle tool, and we want to make it seem a little bit regarding the resolutions like a phone. So yeah, maybe let's put 600 by 2200. Yeah, it looks kind of nice. Since we're working with an Apple sort of style, let's round the edges a bit since it makes it always a little bit cleaner. Remove the stroke here, or make it white at least, we need it later. And now what we will need is to duplicate this 2 times, turn on this thing here, and then put on the fastbox blur, set it to roughly 15, and then go into the properties of the second layer, delete the stroke, we don't need that, put the fill to, we can mess around with that, let's say 20 right now, and we'll see how it looks. And we can here delete the fill, and we need a stroke there, so let's put this to 2 or something like that. Now make all these layers 3D, pan the bottom and the top layer to the middle layer, and now center the anchor point with holding Command and double click this icon. This is pissing me off. Alright, now we can control this, but as you can see, we don't really see anything. So let's make this rather gray maybe. And now we can mess around with the look later. I mean, if we turn down the opacity of this one, we can see it more. So this is what we have right now. It looks kind of clean. And we have to do that now 3 times. I said it in the last tutorial, go into your 2 view if you work with 3D stuff, and now we can just duplicate that, push that back a little, yeah, kind of nice, maybe a little bit like this. Yeah, I mean, you can mess around with that, maybe put it even a little bit backwards. Duplicate again and do the same thing. Always watch out that we have the same distance here roughly. Yeah, that's fine. And also we have to change the order here because otherwise it will mess it up. So the first one goes on top, the second one goes second, and the last one goes to the bottom. Right, now we have our 3D cards in general. Obviously it doesn't look like how we want it to, and we also need to drag this down a bit in order to get that cool look. But we have our basic scene setup. Now, there are multiple ways we can go from now. Either we can animate the camera movement first. However, I would recommend you to roughly build out your scene first before doing any camera movement. So, what we will do is design the first card. Now, in the example that's on the screen right now, you can see I did it for the Apple Health ad. You can put on here whatever you want, right? So for the tutorial's sake, we'll just remake a little bit what I did in the ad so that you can see all the techniques. I used the polygon tool and just created a polygon first. Go into the properties, and I think I made it a hexagon. Yeah. Center the anchor point, and then just rotate this that it looks as we want it to, roughly like that. All right. Now let's just change the color here so that we don't have to mess around with that all the time. Now we can either go for another glassy look like the background. This, or for that we have to do the same technique. So duplicate this 3 times, put the fastbox blur on top, or you can just, for example, if you want to, decrease the opacity of the fill. I mean, this is your choice for tutorial's sake. I'll make it as I made it in the Apple ad. So duplicate this 3 times, put on the fastbox blur, put it to, let's say, 15. We can delete the stroke here, and we can delete the fill here. Minimize the stroke on the second layer, the fill on the second layer. All right, now put these all in 3D and pan the bottom and the first one again to your middle one. And now, to have a little bit of an order here, what we're going to do is make just the shapes that we put on top a different color, because otherwise it's going to be a mess with the controls. Now go into our 2-view again, and now we can, oh shit, now we can just align this how we want to. This does not look like how I want it to, but this is just, you know, tweaking. And obviously, since we want that kind of 3D effect, we'll have to push it out a little in the Z position. We're gonna make this smaller. All right, this is roughly in line. And now we can either, first of all, I want to increase the stroke here a little bit, because isn't it, oh, that's too much. Maybe the 5. Yeah, that looks good. Now we can duplicate that, put that below, push that back a little, make it bigger, and just align it that it looks like we want it to. And then duplicate this once again, push this back, make it bigger. All right, and now the middle ones are still parented to nothing. What we can do now is parent the bottom one to the middle one and the middle one to the top one. And now we can control with just the top one all the other elements. This always helps in your workflow. Parent stuff to each other if it's the same body, because otherwise you're going to have to make the same rotation and the same position keyframes and whatever thousands of times, and you will never get it exactly right, and it will look just, you know, chopped. Now we also had a number on there, and I used a little trick, because as you can see, there are no shadows, and since these are all 3D layers, we can't put any shadows on there. So what I did, I made first of all a layer with, you know, any number that I wanted to display, and, you know, put whatever font you want, it doesn't matter at all. Maybe make this white and make this a 3D layer and put it into the position that you want. In these effects, it's always important to mess around with the Z-axis, because this will give you the kind of 3D and depth that you're looking for. Scale this down a little. I mean, this would look fine already, but we can make it better. And we have to trick a little bit here. So we will copy this 6-7 layer, make a new comp, and name this shadow 6-7. We can trim that down, it doesn't matter. We will paste this here and disable the 3D layer. Go to our align tool and center that. And also maybe enable this one here so that we can just see the background. And now we will first of all make this dark and put on some sort of blur. This is already fine, I think. And now we will import that shadow 6-7 into our comp, make it 3D again, and place that where we would want the shadow to be. Now, this is going to be a little mess because it's dark, but it's fine. Place it however you want. Now we have to decrease the opacity. Also move that maybe a little to the side and down, that the effect will be even greater. Push a little bit more to the front. And this is just, I mean, you will see obviously how you like it. So this way, there's no real formula. This is just for you to try out, right? These are just some subtle shadows which will sell the whole 3D effect even more, right? Let me increase this a little again. Alright, not too bad. Maybe decrease. And now, also very, very important, you will pan this to the ultimate controller of the shape, which was, if you remember correctly, this shape layer, because we panned the other things also to this one. So this is our ultimate controller for this whole geometry. And either you can pan the shadow now to the 6-7 or directly to our control layer. I will put it to the 6-7. But that's really up to you. That doesn't really matter. Now, I mean, what we can do now, we can put something here again. Obviously, this is stuff that's up to your choice. So I will do just you know, example shapes that you get the idea of how the techniques are going, but in the end, it's just the same thing I'm doing all the time. So what I'm gonna do is just, you know, take the rectangle tool and, you know, I'm just gonna make a text box. You can put there whatever you want, actually. I'll make a few different types so you can understand how this all works. But in this case, I'll use a simple text box. Decrease that. It's the same techniques over and over again, you know. You duplicate this as well. Put your fastbox blur in there so you can get that glass sort of look. And then you go here, delete your stroke, and in the bottom one you delete your fill. Stroke we'll put at, I don't know, 3. Fill we'll put at 40, maybe. Let's see if it looks good. Yeah, I think we can work with that. Pan this all together, 3D layer. Same process over and over again. And now we go into our 2-view look. Put this maybe a little bit up front. It's maybe too low. Scale this down a little. All right. Now, not too bad, right? First card basically done. So you know now how to do text layers, you know now how to make this glass sort of look. So let's continue with the next one. And for this one, if we look again into the actual video, what I did, I put this sort of membrane, and I can show you how I did exactly that, because that was a cool technique in my opinion. And we will do that in a new pre-comp. Decrease the height, maybe yeah, like that. And for this one, I have this one in the description down below. You can use that if you want to. Just drag it into your comp. We need to make this a little bit higher, and then we can also, you know, make it like that. Now, obviously, this looks boring, right? I mean, there's no lighting, it's just pink. However, what we can do now is, for example, with the ellipse tool, make a white thing, put some fastbox blur on it, my favorite effect, as you might have caught on now. And what we're going to do now is to make the top layer the alphabet of our shape layer. And as you can see now this is basically resembling a little bit of lighting. Obviously, this is rather dirty and is not actually 3D, but it makes it look a little bit like that. We can duplicate that now, put it onto different things. What we can also do is change the color. We can do whatever we want. So for example, make this, I don't know, orange or something like that. Right? It fits the color in my opinion. Stretch that out. You can do whatever you want, right? Now we can pre-comp this, because now we can animate it. We need to make that bigger so that we can have all the movements. Now let's put a turbulent displays on it. And now this would look a little bit as it's moving, right? You know, if we look at that. So once you have found your look, you can just keyframe. Maybe we can turn down the complexity a little bit. We can keyframe the evolution so that this looks a little bit like a membrane actually vibrating. Maybe this is a little bit too much. Yeah, I like this. Easy sim, but you can do whatever you want. And now we need to make that membrane, put it into our main comp, 3D layer. And now we go into our secondary view, the custom view again. And yeah, just as before, place this onto our second card, in this case the second card, right? And just make it that it fits a little bit, but we can mess around with that. Doesn't need to be perfect for tutorial's sake. Alright, and now if we play this, you can see there's hardly any movement. So we might need to, because we imported the wrong one, right? We have to import the membrane comp, not the membrane full comp, because here on there we have our movement with the turbulent displays. Alright, now obviously if we look at this looks kind of sketchy. Lighting doesn't fit, there are no shadows, yada yada yada. So what we're going to do, because in this case if we were to use a normal light it will look rubbish. Look at this, and this has to do with all the glass layers that we used. So what we're going to do is to make the shadows manually. Since these aren't too many elements, this is doable. So if we remember correctly, our size of the cards in general were roughly 600 by 1200. So we will make a comp with, let's say, 700 by 1400 and name this Shadow 1. And this is going to be a little bit tricky, but otherwise it won't work. You'll take your Eclipse tool and just make a circle, make it black, put on Fastbox Blur, and increase that. Very good for now. Now, first of all, what we will do is that shadow pre-comp, we will import it, and we will put it right above the card what it's for. So first card, we'll put it right above here. We'll make it a 3D layer and put it onto the card. And also we will pan it to that because then movement will be the same. And now we will basically have to rebuild how the shadow would look. So in this case, it will need to be bigger, and then always go back into your comp. And as you can see now, we can roughly see the shadows, right? So if we increase that even more, wow, now obviously that's too much. We can either decrease here a little, or opacity of the shadow comp in general, or you can go back in here, adjust the black and also the opacity, but doesn't look too bad. Now we have to do the same thing for here. So this was a rectangle, so we will use the rectangle tool and just ballpark it roughly. We can just copy the Fastbox Blur from here. We'll make it smaller. And now this is just trying by, or doing by trying. Obviously that's way too down, so we'll move it up a bit. Yeah, that isn't too bad in my opinion, right? Alright, yeah, now we're getting there. Right, this looks rather 3D, right? And now we'll do the same thing for here for the membrane in general. So we will just make a new comp, and the comp settings are still there. So shadow 2, and just put something here for a second because I'll show you another trick. We've already placed that shadow comp quite well here, so we can just duplicate it. We can move the duplicate to where we need it on the second card. So just do it with your custom view again. Move this back a little. Alright. Okay. Obviously, that's still the Shadow 1 comp. We don't want that. What we can do now, though, is we have the, since we already created the Shadow 2 comp, we have it here. And if we hold Alt or Option on Mac and have the one that we want to replace there, we can, oh shit, my bad. We can drag this down and still hold Alt or Option and just let go. And now we have the other comp with the same exact position and everything. This just makes life a whole lot easier, right? So now we can either make another just, you know, shadow, or what I tried in the video that I uploaded was actually, I think I made it like pink or something like that. I mean, this obviously depends on what you're going to put there. So I mean, obviously this looks shit now. If we were to make it white, it probably won't be better either. Yeah, no, so let's make a shadow in general, just dark. Obviously that's too dark because it's just a membrane, so we have to maybe dial that back a lot. Make this opacity in general more. Yeah, I think that works. Yeah, that's fine, I guess. Alright, now we have our 3D comp set up in general. And now it's back to animating. So first of all, we will make the null movement. Import null, and let's see that after making it 3D, our anchor point is roughly there where we want it to be. Yeah, that's fine, I guess. And now we'll have to do a whole lot of panning. So for example, need to pan the membrane, this layer, basically everywhere where it says none, we have to pan it to the null. Or you can just go here, put to null, everything but the background, obviously. And now if we were to rotate this, you can see everything's moving. Perfect. Keyframe all, the position, rotation, scale. I like to just do all, even though I might not need it. And I wanted to move him from the side. That position really is fucked up. I might have to change that. Let's do this now. This is... Did I even... Oh, that's why. Alright, as you can see, I forgot to pan this. And everything's messed up from that point on. Alright, yeah, now it's working. Alright, I wanted to pan in from here. Obviously, I incorporated it into my video, so we had a different starting point, but just for tutorial's sake, let's do like this maybe. I don't know if it will look good. Make some sort of graph, whatever you want. Yeah, that's okay. I can get my hands around that. And then we'll duplicate this null. And on the point where we want to restart, we'll delete all the keyframes. Pan the other null to the new null. And we just keep animating it, maybe this time like this, so everybody can see that we know how to work in 3D space. Lighting is shit that way. Move this back a little. I mean, obviously this is subjective. Whatever movement you want, you can put there. Doesn't really matter. Easy ease that again, F9. And then you have to see what graphs you want to use, because Apple obviously uses very smooth animation, so we'll see how this actually plays out. Let's just simplify that. And then we'll animate the separate cards afterwards. Yeah, not too bad. For tutorial's sake, it's fine. Now, for example, now we can see that, in my opinion, the membrane is too far away. So we can just choose that one and push it back a little. And now we can also see this sort of 3D effect really comes into play now. And maybe put that back a little as well. And this 6-7 shadow doesn't come into play at all. Oh, shit. I don't like that, and this is a real issue because we've made some sort of mistake here. Right. That was before I mixed it up. Obviously this should be the 6-7 shadow. I was wondering all the time where the shadow went. But yeah, now this looks better. Okay, and now we can animate the cards. And now with animating the cards, now it really comes into play if we have parented everything correctly. Because now if we want to animate just, for example, and save ourselves a little bit of time, we can just animate this one, and if we pan everything correctly, everything will move with us. So the shadow and even these elements, we didn't pen that correctly, so we'll have to correct it now. Now obviously this was this whole group and this was our control layer, and we penned it to the null, but it should be going to this layer so that it moves down with us. And same goes for this one. And now if we do that again, everything moves with us. But if we look over here, also the shadow, the second shadow, which we just replaced, the original one was obviously penned to card 1, so we'll have to pen that to the card 2. And now if we move this, as you can see, nothing's moving over here. And same goes for this one. The membrane should not be penned to the null, but actually to the card that where it lies upon. So in this case, layer 24. Put it to layer 24. And the shadow 2 is already, we already solved that. So now we can keyframe all these cards separately. In this case, I will just do the position. And maybe once we're up here, I want them to be fully visible. So now we'll just push that down. And give this some simple graphs. Now obviously this looks boring, so we will make it that these come separate into the picture by dragging the keyframes. Obviously here you can also make your animation individually. But yeah, I like this. That's fine. And now what we could also do now, if we wanted to, animate the separate here sort of tiles, stuff like that. Either the whole thing or separate ones if we were to parent it differently. That's your choice. And now if we look at it again, we can see, okay, we don't really see the membrane movement. So if we open the membrane comp again, we can just increase, for example, the size and stuff like that, and then it will be more visible. If you structure your scene properly in the beginning, you can change stuff like this now afterwards. And now we'll just enable motion blur on everything. Right, that looks a little bit smoother. And we can work on the background now if we wanted to. I always like to use it for color gradient and make it different tones of white. This makes it look a little bit more professional. Let's increase the thing here again. Actually decrease it a little bit. Alright, now. But this is just simple stuff because we don't even animate the background, so that's all fine. Alright, now this is what we have. We have these shapes, we have the cards, we have the glass morphism, and now that we look right, the membrane still isn't positioned correctly. We can just move that along. These are things that you can do afterwards, and these are things that you have to do individually if you don't remake this exact thing that I did here. I hope that you enjoyed, and comment further effects that I should go over from my recent videos. Cheers, Kram out.